Lieberman and a group of people, and I'm doing it for that reason.
Mr. Trump, this event is about bipartisanship and working together.
I think it's very important.
What you've done has gone after your other Republican opponents. Are you going to tweak your message today at all?
No, Sarah, I haven't gone after my Republican opponents at all. Not even at all. They've gone after me. I only go after them when they go after me. I'm a counterpuncher. They go after me, I go after them, and they drop out of the race. That seems to be what's happened.
What's the major issue to reach across the aisle, Mr. Trump?
I think you have a lot of issues. I mean, you have a lot of issues where everyone agrees, Democrats and Republicans, like corporate inversion, money coming back into this country. We can't get it back in. Money coming from corporations, $2.5 trillion. The Republicans agree into this country to spend the money in this country. Everybody agrees, they still can't get it done.
Mr. Trump, there's a House Speaker. Which Democrat would you like to work with?
I think I can work with a lot of Democrats, and I'll work with all the Republicans, and you'll get things done. Right now, Washington is in total gridlock. It's ridiculous. Well, we'll see what happens. I think is probably 3 or 4. I know 3 or 4. I'm not going to mention names because I don't know that they want it. But we need somebody very tough, very smart, and somebody that's not so divisive.
Mr. Trump, you participated in 2 Republican debates. The Democrats have their first tomorrow. Any advice for them on stage?
Well, I think it's not going to be very well rated because Trump isn't in the debate. I'm only kidding. I think it's not going to be highly rated. I think it's going to be, you're going to watch it for 10 or 15 minutes. People are going to get bored and turn it off.
Are you going to be watching it?
I'll be watching it.
Mr.
I don't know how long. It's going to be hard to watch. I think it's not going to be a very exciting debate.
Can we ask you what your comments on gun control?
Say it again?
There are super PACs that are supporting you. Would you ask them to stop what they're doing?
Well, I understand. I don't even know how many, but I know people have set up super PACs as I understand it. I never spoke to the people. I don't know who the people are. I hope that they're good. But I understand they have 5 or 6 super PACs where they want Trump in, and I understand that because our country is going to hell. And I fully understand it. But I know that they do have 5 or 6 super PACs. But I know nothing about them because I have nothing to do with them. I don't even know the people running them.
Who are you rooting for?
Excuse me?
If you're watching the Democratic debate, who are you rooting for?
I'm not rooting for anybody. I mean, I just want to see what they have to say. There are a lot of bad ideas out there, but I want to see what they have to say. I think it's going to be interesting to see. You have 3 of them that are, registered very low. But I think it's going to be interesting for at least the first 10 minutes.
What's one of your good ideas? What's one of your good ideas?
Out of all the Democrats, who would you want to go against if you were the Republican?
I have no concept of that yet. I think it's too early. I'd frankly be very happy with any of them.
Your comments the other day on guns. Are there anything you would do with gun control? Would you close some of the loopholes, background checks?
It's mental health. It's a mental health issue. It's not a gun issue. It's a mental health issue. And that's where we have to focus. And frankly, and I've said it, if they had guns, if the teacher had a gun and they would know how to use it in that classroom, you would have had a lot better situation than it turned out in Oregon.
Hillary Clinton's a friend of yours. Her number's been slumping. What advice would you give to her at this point?
Well, she's not a friend of mine. I think nobody probably has hit her as tough. Her numbers is absolutely slumping. She's slumping. I mean, we'll see what happens.
Well, what's your advice?
I have no advice for her. She's a... And that's why we're here
What
today.
about a liberal cause?
That's why we're here today.
A liberal cause you agree with? That's what we're here for, right?
Well, no, we're not here for liberal.
We're here for compromise.
No, we're here for compromise.
There are undecided voters in there. What's your pitch to them? Is it any different than your pitch?
Well, this is a little bit of a different thing today because today we're talking about getting along and we're talking about really getting together and getting things done because Washington is at gridlock. It is in a total state of gridlock. I've never seen it this way. In the old days, you had Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan, and they were on different sides, but they'd get along and they'd make deals. And today, you don't do that at all. I mean, it's total gridlock. And then you have President Obama going out signing executive orders all over the place because he can't get anything done. And those will be unwound when it gets through the court system. I mean, the problem with the executive orders, they will be unwound as they go through the system. So it's a real problem. You need leadership. Our country has no leadership.
Mr. Trump, you're going to be speaking within a couple hours of Bernie Sanders. What about Bernie Sanders do you like? Do you think you could agree with him on?
Well, Bernie Sanders feels strongly about trade because he knows, and one thing I will say about him, he knows we're being ripped off on trade. And he's the one politician that talks about that. Outside of Bernie Sanders, I don't hear people talking about it. So if you talk about the one issue that I would say that we get along with, I am very, very strong about having great trading deals. we have horrible trading deals. We're losing tremendous amounts of jobs, money, and everything else. And I don't think to the extent that I believe in it, but at least Bernie Sanders believes in that to a certain extent.
Do you think Joe Biden should
Go on stage. Right through the door.
I'm going on stage. Bye, folks.
Amazon station. Corey.
Yeah, I just don't, I don't want that coming.
Yes, that's good. Good. All right, good. More than enough to use.
Yeah, she goes to all the political events. She's like a Miss Teen something.
A great couple of months until April of 2011, when we had a near government shutdown. In the middle of that summer, a near default. At the end of August, a partial shutdown of the Federal Aviation Agency, the creation of a supercommittee, the failure of the supercommittee, and then the sequester. It, in no doubt, helped President Obama have a foil to run against in his re-election campaign against Mitt Romney. Tell us how you joined with the Problem Solver Caucus and how it created a path out of the gridlock for you and the members that are in it.
Right, AB, thank you. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, that period of time in early 2011, when many of us actually arrived in Washington at the same time, it was an exciting time, but it was also a frustrating time and a trying time. And we ran, with the frustrations of our constituents on our back to go and try to solve some problems. And we ran head on. We all ran to solve those problems, and we ran head on into some of the issues that have been talked about here today. I just want to mention, following up on what Sean Patrick Maloney said, I'm a father of 6 children with regard to education. So my kids, they're all trying to go to college at the same time. And it's a very, very expensive prospect. So it doesn't matter what party you are, what district you represent, or what part of the country you come from. We have the same issues as members of Congress as our constituents have. So we're sent there to try to solve them. And when we got there in early 2011, for the first couple of months, there was a lot of legislating that went on. There was sort of freewheeling on the floor of the House. People were submitting amendments, they were getting votes, and it was actually very exciting. And then when the really tough decisions came up, and AB talked about the debt ceiling and continued government operations, that's when it got more difficult. And when times get tough, as they say, on the floor of the House, you're going to see the legislators that are sent there not just to solve the problems, but to follow it up and make the tough vote. And what you're looking at here are members of Congress who vote after careful consideration, a lot of work to raise the debt ceiling and make sure we don't default on the nation's debt, who vote to continue to fund government operations so it can continue to serve the people, even while we continue to have the debates on what the government ought to look like. And one of the few organizations that exist in the nation's capital for individuals like ourselves, moderate Democrats, moderate Republicans who want to solve those problems, is the No Labels Problem Solvers Caucus. And it started with a small group in early 2011, and today, I think, Tom, you said we're up to over about 100 individuals or so, roughly half Democrat and half Republican. And we're there so when the issues come up in the future. And AB, in the very beginning of the session here, you talked about those bipartisan votes like the doc fix, like Trade Promotion Authority, and they were bipartisan. But so was the vote 2 weeks ago to keep government operational. And we here on the stage, we voted for that. And so I think the paradigm in the future will be hopefully a majority of Democrats and a majority of Republicans coming together around these tough issues and working together on them. And the caucus gives us the chance to do that and talk about it.
Thank you so much, Congressman Fitzpatrick. Speaking of moving from the smaller goals to the larger ones, Congressman Bera, in the great clash of 1995 and 1996, I remember it, the Republicans taking over for after 40 years. They had specific goals in the contract with America, and you could agree with them or not, but just like health care, they pushed something through that was a clear goal, and they united around it. President Clinton and Speaker Gingrich then went on to balance the budget and reform welfare. No Labels is asking our next president, and no matter what Congress he or she is working with, divided, united, same party, different party, to work together on ambitious goals on energy independence, creation of jobs, entitlement reform, and things that up till now have enjoyed majority support in the country but have eluded the Congress. How have your smaller efforts or your medium efforts on the Hill created a path where you can see a president committed to this agenda as well as the Congress actually moving forward on at least one of them?
Well, think about it. We're Americans first, and we have to look at this as Americans first, not a Republican or a Democrat. So the efforts that we started in the last Congress, coming together as 40 members of Congress, 23 Democrats, 17 Republicans, saying we are committed to problem solving, meeting every other week for breakfast, getting to know one another, getting to know one another's families, growing that group to over 100 members of Congress is a solid foundation. We're committed to work together, and we've demonstrated that we're willing to cross over. Now, when we regrouped this Congress and said, okay, where can we have impact, and sat down with No Labels, we really understand the next president in their first 100 days has a real opportunity to do something big. We absolutely believe we need a national strategic agenda. You'd not run a business if you didn't have a business plan. In your household, you've got an agenda, and we absolutely are committed to this national strategic agenda. That's why all of you here in New Hampshire are so important. What you're doing as you're interacting with those presidential candidates, make sure you ask them if they're committed to this national strategic agenda. I don't want to say we're just going to do one of those 4 goals, because all 4 of those goals are absolutely critical. You don't elect us to do the easy things, you elect us to do the necessary things, and absolutely that next president, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, has to be committed. So on day 1, 100, maybe more than that, we're going to try to get every member of Congress to commit to these goals. But on that first day, if it's 100 of us, we will go to the president and say, look, here's a bipartisan group of members of Congress that have endorsed these 4 strategic goals. We want to work with you, and let's get it done. So, we're committed to this. We understand what's at stake. This is our children and grandchildren's future here, and that is why we're willing to do what is necessary. But your role here in New Hampshire, in the first primary state in the country, get out there and hold those candidates accountable, push them to be specific on their goals, and make sure they sign off on these 4 strategic agendas, because we're committed.
Thank you, Congressman Barra. I think, I hope that the members have made it clear how much you need to stay involved, become more energized, really engage other people around you to try to put the pressure not only on members of Congress, but on the candidates and the next president as well. And to that end, I want to open up the floor for questions from you. I'm going to be looking around the gentleman here. Okay. These are for you guys, okay?
First, thank you, gentlemen, for coming.
I got a good one. Because they're going to answer, not me. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. I first apologize for the fact I missed the memo about the blue suit.
Power on 12.
One could argue that in addition to the 4 strategic objectives, strategic goals of No Labels, there needs to be a 5th overarching goal, and that has to do with big money and big politics. I would argue that absent fixing that, none of the other 4 are going to see much headway. Senator Graham alluded to the fact that maybe we need a constitutional amendment for Citizens United. That's a pretty high bar. Absent a constitutional amendment, what can you do specifically to fix the big money, big politics problem?
But I'm happy to start with that. We need to know where that money is coming from, so certainly we can enact legislation to have transparency in there. It is going to be tough to overturn Citizens United unless the Supreme Court decides that they may have made a mistake on this one. It then is going to be a grassroots movement of folks coming together and really pushing things. There are a lot of individuals and organizations around the country that are working on this issue. I would encourage folks to get involved in that, because I agree with you. Until we get all this money out of politics, we will not have real debate.
Hi, my name is Patrick Sweeney from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm baffled by, I spent 32 years in the legislature, and I'm baffled by the absence of reaction to the fact that in 2010, immediately after the election, both political leaders that were going to take over in a month dedicated themselves to the failure of the administration, and not one bit of noise out of the Democrats, the Republicans, total silence. I'm baffled. What happened? I mean, how can you have a situation where the party leadership is dedicated to the failure of administration? Sedition, probably.
Well, you're talking about Senator McConnell saying that his goal was to make the president a one-term president? Yeah, that's off the rails. I mean, those of us who get elected, that's competition in the election. But once you get office, it's about cooperation. It's not. That's not complicated.
Well, the gentleman yield.
Tom.
That's a DC thing. As a Republican, absolutely the wrong approach to take. And what I will say is there's a new generation of leaders in Washington, D.C. There are about 70% of us in the House and the Senate that have not served under any other president than this president. That is a fresh breath. That is a fresh breath of leadership that we are trying to harness and move forward with. And I can see it happening. I'm going to leave you with an optimistic note. Don't buy into all the headlines, all the things on Fox News, MSNBC, because there are hardworking men and women in Washington, D.C., like these folks up here and the folks in the Problem Solvers Caucus that are coming together to solve America's problems, and we're going to get it done.
But also, I think, back to AB's first question, we need all your help. Everyone in this room, who watches Fox News in this room? Who watches MSNBC in this room? All right, for 1 week, all you MSNBC watchers watch Fox. And for that same week, all you Fox watchers watch MSNBC. Will you do that? Will you do that? Will you actually listen to somebody who disagrees with you? That's what we need more of in this country. That's what Problem Solvers is about, is listen to ideas that are different than your own. My God, you might learn something. Imagine if Congress worked that way.
All right, I want to thank everyone in the audience today. Thank you so much. Thank you, members. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, please welcome Joe Lieberman.
I ate it up and spit it out.
Thank you, dear friends. It's great to be back up here. I have, as they say in Washington, the higher honor of introducing the next presidential candidate, who is unique in many ways. Just to give you the hint, he's the only candidate that they use the article "the" before his name, like the Vatican or the Hague or the Bronx. The Donald Trump is the surprise phenomenon of this presidential campaign, consistently leading the national and state polls of Republican candidates, as he himself has occasionally pointed out. But those polls are important and relevant and have a message that is important and relevant for all of us about public opinion today. Many people obviously see Donald Trump as the best vehicle to express the most common emotions of this intense and unusual campaign, which are disappointment, disdain, and anger toward the status quo in Washington. Those same emotions and opinions are exactly what led to the creation of No Labels. But as you know, No Labels is not a campaign for a candidate. We are a national campaign for an idea, which is to make America's government work for the people of America again. Let me say that Donald Trump's life gives us at least two great lessons and very consistent with what No Labels is about. He's had a very successful career in real estate, and we all know he's successful not because he knocked buildings down, but because he built buildings up. And we need leaders in America today who will build up America's government again. Secondly, we need leaders who can agree on some big goals and then negotiate the details to get them accomplished. Now, this candidate has had some experience negotiating deals. In fact, he wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. Nobody in Washington seems able to negotiate a deal on anything as basic as even the budget. So I hope that maybe Donald Trump will talk to us today about what the lessons of his negotiating deals in private life can teach him and every other candidate running this year about how to, as he might put it, make America great again. But whatever he talks about, I want to say how grateful we at No Labels are that he adjusted his schedule to be with us today, and how glad I am now to introduce to you. And incidentally, he's not here to fire any of you. He is here, I've been authorized to say, to fire you up. Ladies and gentlemen, the Donald Trump.
Thank you very much, everybody. That's so nice. Wow. No Labels. That's right. I'm a believer. You know, John and Joe called, and they said, would you do it? This is about 2 months ago. And I said, well, I think I will be able to. They explained what no labels represented. We all know that that's where we have to go in this country because we're getting nothing done whatsoever. So I said, I think so. I have to get out. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to do it. So they then, the next day, they announced, I will be there without question, right? They're tough negotiators. So I had another problem. We had another speech someplace. It was actually quite a bit of a problem. And I told them I wouldn't do it. See, they were solvers. They were problem solvers. And they went nuts. They were not happy. Is that right, Joe and John? They were not happy people. And ultimately, I said, you know what? I may have gone a little over that 50% level. And so here I am, right? Here I am. And I love New Hampshire. And as Joe said, you know, the latest poll came out, 32 to 14 or 13 or so. I think it's 13. And I have the 32, which is even better. Somebody said, why do you talk about the polls? I said, because I'm winning. They go, but nobody else ever talks about the polls. That's because they do lousy in the polls. Nobody else talks about the polls. They don't do well in the polls. Believe me, if they were doing well, they'd be talking about the polls. But we had 32 to 13, and that's a big gap, and that's in New Hampshire. And we've been here a lot. I know so many people. I have so many friends in New Hampshire. They're amazing people, amazing. So thank you all. I really appreciate it. So when we talk about no labels and we talk about getting along, and I'm not going to say it too much because Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan, you probably hear it every speaker, but I look at that as the ultimate. We're two people, different views, different everything, and they liked each other, and they got along, and they got things done, and they had a leader in Ronald Reagan. Because ultimately it is about the president. It is, much more so about the president than you can imagine. And if the president is a leader, if he's a real leader or she is a real leader, you'll get things done. But you need the leadership to come from the very pinnacle, from the very top. And if it doesn't, it's not going to happen. And that's not happening now. It's not happening now. People aren't getting together. And I see it. You know, I've been actually doing this for a long time. A lot of people say, oh, gee, I was very establishment. I was the ultimate. I gave more money than anybody. I mean, I would give so much money. I was all establishment when I gave contributions, right? When I decided to run, I was anti-establishment. Can you believe this? But we can't take a chance on a loss. I mean, I watched previously, in particular two, and last time I was seriously thinking about doing it. I decided not to because I thought it was a race that could have been won, should have been won, and I don't want that to happen again. I don't want it to happen again. Because I think it's really, if you look at what happened 4 years ago, boy, timing was right, everything was right, and it should have been done. Well, it's going to be done this time, and hopefully it's going to be done by me, and I think we're going to have a result that's going to be great. We're going to turn the country around. We're going to make America great again, and that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. I looked at a couple of things that I thought would be appropriate. And I'm thinking back of my career and on my career. When I was young, a young man in New York, we had a problem called a skating rink. It took 8 years. Everyone knows the Woolman skating rink. They now study it in all the business schools. They're all nodding their heads. We all studied it. I didn't study it, but I did it. But it's in all the business schools about what private enterprise can do. And we had a rink. I mean, it wasn't such a little deal. It was a 80,000-foot rink. It's a very big rink. And the government, under Mayor Ed Koch, couldn't get it built. They were trying, it was actually a renovation, wasn't even building. And after 8 years, and I have a daughter growing up, she kept saying, Dad, I want to go ice skating. And for year after year, I'd say to Ivanka, anybody ever hear of Ivanka, right? She's great. But she'd say, can I go ice skating, Dad? And for years, for 7 years, I said, I can't. There's no ice. And I'd go over to the rink and I'd see the men and their workers, and they'd be sitting down. They had lunch breaks. It would take like 4 or 5 hours. There'd be hundreds of guys sitting down at the rink. I said, boy, that's terrible. And I'd pass it. And after the 7th year, I went to Koch. And I said, Ed, I got it. I can do this thing fast. This is ridiculous. They're not working. They're using the wrong everything. And I met with the unions. I met with people that do refrigeration. They were doing refrigeration. The engineer was based in Miami, Florida. I said, it's true. And they were using Freon. And Freon, that means if you have a little tiny hole in 30 miles of pipe, little tiny hole, it's not going to work. Guess, it'll go out. And I said, doesn't sound good, but why do we want a guy? So I called up the Montreal Canadiens ice hockey team. I said, could I ask you a question? Who does your rinks? Oh, we have somebody excellent. He's based right here in Montreal. I said, now we're talking. And he came in, great guy, came in. He looked at what was happening. He immediately said, you can't use Freon. It won't work. It'll freeze, it'll this, it won't work. You have to use brine. You know what brine is? It's water with salt in it. How simple could that get? So on top of everything else, it was much less expensive. Anyway, I got to town. Ed Koch said, will you do it? Because it was a very huge embarrassment for the New York people. They all know what I'm talking about. And we had cement mixers because it was a massive pour. They were pouring little sections like 10 feet by 10 feet. You can imagine this massive rink. Like take the biggest office floor you know and double and triple it. And they'd pour a little section and then another little section. And then the vandals would come in at night and steal all the copper. Because the Freon, you have to use the copper. So I said, this is not good. So, and you want one contiguous pour. So I had trucks based from, literally from the rink all the way back to Harlem. All the way up to 125th Street, cement mixers. And we poured it all in one day. It was 24 hours. They were pouring during the day, during the night. It was 26 hours and 25 minutes. And we poured one contiguous pour. It healed beautifully. When the city did it, it was like this. So they had on one side 1.5 foot of water, and on the other side, they didn't have any water. So they couldn't make ice for a lot of reasons. So, and actually, you know, when I talk about the price, the biggest problem I had was demolition. That was the biggest cost. I had to demolish everything that was done. So I got it done. I got everybody together, and we got it done. And to this day, it's the most successful ice skating rink. I still run it. I run it. Nobody, every time it comes up, the city they don't want to take any chances. But I've run it for many years, and it's the #1 in the world, and it does great. And it's sort of, I was just thinking about it coming up because we're talking about no labels. I was talking to John, I was talking to Joe, and we're talking about getting together. I got together with everybody. The city, the council, everything had to be done fast. The beauty is, I did it in 4 months. This is after 8 years. I did it in 4 months. I did it for $1.8 million. The city had spent over $20 million. And I always say most of it was demolition. Okay? That's what happens. And you can do that with this country. You can do it with the country. And believe me, you can do things that people have no idea, construction-wise. Our roads are falling apart. Our bridges, our tunnels, our airports. I just left LaGuardia Airport. It's like a third world airport. No, it's third world. I mean, it's horrible. You look at it, you go out to the runways, it's horrible. And I go to places because I travel all over the world. I have so many different relationships and partnerships and very complicated stuff. And I meet the richest people, the richest companies in the world. And I'm partners with many of them in different parts. And you go to Qatar and you go to all of the different places. By the way, all over China, all over China. You go to Bahrain, you go to Saudi Arabia. You see airports, you've never seen anything like it. You've never seen anything like it. They build temporary airports while they're building the big one that are 100 times nicer than anything we have in this country. We're just, we've lost it. We've lost it. Another deal that just happened, and this was again getting everybody together. The city of New York in the Bronx, right outside of Manhattan, and most of you have read about it, they had a 350-acre piece of land on the water, on the East River. The East River's great. People have apartments in the East River, right? He knows what I'm going to say. And it was 350 and expandable into 550 acres. This is like 5 minutes outside of Manhattan. I'd say right off the Manhattan ramp. And they've been building a golf course, I think, for 30 years. I think. Somebody said it's really not 30, it's 21 years. Oh, okay, it's 21. So whether it's 20, 21, or 30, but I think it's 30. It's been under construction for many, many years. We believe the cost is over $300 million. In fact, the mayor said to me, what do you think it should have cost? I said about 7, but I believe the cost is over $300 million. And they couldn't get it done. And Mayor Bloomberg said, you got to help us. Please, you got to help us. So they went to an RFP. I got the RFP, so I have a long-term deal. And I took it over. I got it done in less than a year. For peanuts. It's beautiful. It's getting all rave reviews. I had to get the city together. I had to get all the unions together. I had to get everybody together. And we got it done, and they worked so hard. And now it's open, and it's setting every record because of its location. It's phenomenal. I mean, to be right next to Manhattan and on the river, it's unbelievable. So you can do these things, but it's about leadership. You have to get people together. And frankly, if I had somebody that worked for me who was good, it wouldn't be good enough. It had to come from me because I needed the mayor's help. I needed the city council's help. I needed a lot of, and the case we're talking about comes from the president. Has to come from the president. And I'll give you something that to me is so big. Corporate inversion. You know, I look at your different things that you have, things that you want to do. Create 25 million jobs. This is the organization that you want to do. Balance the federal budget by 2030. 2030. That's an easy one. 2000. Actually, you know, I looked at it because they gave me this note. I said, I think there's a typo. 2030. Secure Social Security, they have to do it. People have a contract. We all have a contract. I don't need mine, by the way. And by the way, I think if somebody doesn't want it, give it up. But it's got to be that person's decision. Okay? It's got to be that person. You know, I have friends that are worth hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. They get Social Security. They don't even know the check comes in. They'll never see the check. You know, there are a lot of people would give it up. I mean, for the good of the country. It's almost like, give it up. I want to do that. I don't know if anybody's even talked about it. I've never heard it, but I have friends that they all say, we don't want it. Let's give it up. You have a lot of people who do it. And you do it on the basis of spirit for the country because we have to keep Social Security for the people that really need it. So important. And make America energy secure by 2024. I mean, it's almost energy secure now. We have so much because of technology. What we have in the ground is enormous. But we're not allowed to export it. And we have more than anybody. You know, we have more really good stuff. I have friends, Harold Hamm and some other people. They're oil people. They're great people. We have the best stuff, the really best stuff. I'm not talking about the tar sands, which are fine, but it's very expensive to get the oil. Very, very expensive. And it costs a lot of money. You have to heat it, and you have to cool it, and you have to do all sorts of, it's expensive. We have the best stuff. We have prime. We have prime. And we don't use it. And yet, we're not allowed to use coal anymore, and yet we export coal to China. And then we say China has to go under the agreement. But they don't have to go under for 25 and 35 years. So we're doing it now, they're doing it in 35 years. I mean, how stupid are we? How stupid do they think we are? Okay? How stupid do they think we are? It's like our military. I love the military. I love our vets. I will take such great care of our vets, believe me. I have a lot of my friends here. A lot of my friends are here, the vets. Our vets are being treated worse, I'm telling you, worse than illegal immigrants coming into this country. They're being treated worse, and they're our greatest people. And our wounded warriors, they're not being treated fairly, and we'll take care of that. But when you look at all of the difficulties, I watched President Obama last night on television. He bombed, very simply. And it was not easy for him because Steve Croft was doing they were much nicer to me 2 weeks ago, don't we agree? I was on with Putin, can you believe that? Putin and Trump. Nice stablemates, very nice. Putin and Trump. But Obama was on last night, and I thought, you know, after about 10, 15 minutes, I said, you know, every single thing is negative. ISIS, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, the economy, 100 million people in the labor force. 100 million. Think of it. They're not going to get jobs. You know, the statistic of 5.4%, it's a phony statistic. Doesn't mean anything. Other than the politicians in this room, they don't count because they're fabulous. These are fabulous people. I hate to insult people when they're sitting there with their wives. You know, it's terrible. So these are great people. But other than that statistic was made up by politicians because you always look good. Guy looks for a job. He can't find one or a woman. They go back home. They say, I can't find one. I've looked now for months. I can't find one. They go back. They're considered essentially employed. Who ever heard of this? We have 100 million people, 100 million people out of the workforce. It's the highest number it's ever been. You know, somebody said, a very, very talented person, said our unemployment rate, and I'm not gonna take this number, but actually said our unemployment rate is 42%. Think of it. And if you really add it up, it is. So I only say 20, 21, 22, because I want to be nice to the president, okay? But it's a disaster. We have to create jobs. We have to take jobs back from all of these countries that are ripping us. We have to bring them back. We have to bring them back home. So what happens, and what has to happen, is we will get into a situation where, hopefully, when the next president is interviewed by 60 Minutes or whoever, they can say, wow, you've really made some unbelievable strides with trade deals. I mean, I have Carl Icahn lined up. I have the smartest, toughest negotiators in the world lined up. They don't want anything for it. Just like I don't want a salary. If I win, I don't want, somebody said to me the other day, will you want your salary if you become president? I said, never thought of it. I said, no, I don't want it. I don't want it. These guys don't want anything. They actually want to help. They want to do something. And I know people that are so tough and smart. You don't just need tough. I was saying the other day, they said, oh, you want tough in terms of speaker. You want tough. And I said, no, I don't want tough. I want tough and smart. Tough is no good. I know too many tough people, they're not smart. You need the combination, right? Right. But you need the combination. We need smart, tough people. We got to bring our country back. Because we can't go on like this. We can't go on like this. We cannot continue to lose. You know our trade deficit, U.S. trade deficit with China. I had it looked up. It's almost $400 billion a year. And last year was the same thing. And I went back 5 years. It gets worse. It gets worse. Now, if you want to do business with China, you can't. I have friends that are manufacturers. They can't get their product in. And if they do, they get a huge tariff. They have to pay a huge tariff. A man that I'm very close to, and by the way, I love the Chinese. I think they're great. But their leaders are too smart. I love Mexico. I love the Mexican people. They're great. But their leaders are too smart for our leaders. They're killing us at the border. They're killing us with trade. Nabisco is moving into Mexico. Can you believe it? Their big plant. They're leaving Chicago, which means I'm never going to eat another Oreo again. I'm serious. Never. Never. Ford is building a $2.5 billion plant in Mexico. How does that help us? They're closing in Michigan, all these plants, and they're going to build this massive plant. Explained, I went to the Wharton School of Finance. Why is this good for us? Why? In Tennessee, they were all set to announce a big plant, and the company announced very quickly, very ruthlessly, they've decided to go to Mexico instead. So now they're going to Mexico instead. Not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We're going to keep our jobs in the United States. You want to do business with some of these countries, they charge you tax. We don't charge them tax because we're stupid. We don't charge them. It's not fair. So we need problem solvers. We need leaders. And you can't have leadership unless you know how to, unless we're going to make our country rich again. A woman came up to me. She said, Mr. Trump, I like you. She's from New Hampshire. I like you so much, but are you a nice enough person to be president? Can you believe it? I said, I think I'm nice. I love people. But it's not, I told her. I said, I'm nice, believe me. And I'm going to take care of people. I'm going to take care of women. I'm going to take care of men. I'm going to take care of the African Americans. Look at their employment rates. It's a record. African American youth, you look at what's going on in the inner cities, African American youth, they can't get jobs at all. 60, 70% unemployment. I'm going to take care of people. But I said to her, I really don't believe this is going to be about, am I a nice person? I think people are fed up with incompetent politicians that don't get things done. I'm telling you. I think they're fed up. And I think this is going to be an election that's going to be largely based on competence because we want our country back. We want to take it back. We want our country back. So It's really an honor to be with you. It's an incredible group. Behind me is the future. Except for a couple of people in the audience that I know. Forget that. But this is the future. And I thought I'd take a couple of questions. They were asking, would I be able to take a couple of questions? So it'd be my honor. Go ahead, sir. Yes. Go ahead. Sure. Wait.
Mr. Trump,
you look healthy to me. Go ahead.
I would like to thank you for continuing this constructive conversation. As you probably know, President Bush started PEPFAR, which has been an incredible fund, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. It has really been incredibly effective at AIDS treatment globally. And what I, as long as with a group of college students across the country, really want to ask you is if you would commit to doubling the number of people on treatment to 30 million people by the year 2020?
Well, I like committing to all of those things. Those are great things. Alzheimer's, AIDS, so many different. You know, we're close on some of them. On some of them, honestly, with all of the work that's been done, which hasn't been enough, we're not very close. But the answer is yes. I believe so strongly in that. And we're going to lead the way. We're going to lead the way on that. Okay, yes, sir.
Michael Arado Gavrish, Derry, New Hampshire.
Good.
And I am impressed that you are here in person, I have to admit.
That's good. Thank you.
I'm going to throw a question at you, and I think it's going to be a hard one for you to answer.
Go ahead.
So here's the challenge. Compromise has become a dirty word. If the other side said, we will do this, this, and that, and all they asked for you was for a tax increase, a specific tax increase, or getting rid of a tax deduction, what could you offer at the table, again, as a gesture of compromise?
Okay, well, let me just say the word compromise is not a bad word to me. As a negotiator and having written The Art of the Deal and having made deals all my life, and I'm coming out with a book in 3 weeks. It's a rough title. Does anyone know the title of the book? It's a rough title. Crippled America. You know, I'll tell you, it's a very sad title because Simon & Schuster called me. They said, we'd love to do a book. And I said, I started writing. But I like the word compromise. We need compromise. There's nothing wrong with compromise. But it's always good to compromise and win. Meaning, let's compromise and win. Now, as far as taxes are concerned, you know, I put out a plan where I'm reducing taxes very substantially. In fact, we're bringing corporate down to 15%. We're bringing tremendous tax reductions to virtually everybody. We're getting rid of a lot of the deductions, like carried interest, which is meant for the hedge fund guys. I mean, these are hedge fund deductions. We're getting rid of them. The hedge fund guys don't want to talk to me anymore. They wanted to give me millions. I'm self-funding my campaign. I'm not taking money from hedge funds or anybody else. They want to give me millions of dollars. I don't want it. Because if I take it, I got to be like Jeb Bush, I got to be like Rubio, I got to be like all these guys, and I got to do what they tell me to do. Because believe me, they're puppets. Believe me, they are puppets. So I'm self-funding my campaign, but we have asked for a very major tax reduction and a major, major simplification. So I think you'll be very happy. And the word compromise is absolutely fine. But if you're going to compromise, ask for about 3 times more than you want. Do you understand? So that when you compromise, you get what you want. Okay. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. She doesn't have a mic. Who's got a mic back there? Okay, good. Oh, look who we have. Good. Good.
I'm Allie Null. I'm Miss America's Outstanding Teen, and I
Good.
travel across the country and teach kids about saving money, which is hard. Our government isn't even fiscally responsible. So I'm asking every single candidate, and I've been waiting to ask you.
In particular.
Yeah, of course. So specifically, what are you going to do about the $18 trillion deficit?
All right. Well, what we're going to do, I mean, we do, and by the way, it's not 18 trillion, it's now. Number one, we have tremendous cutting to do. You have a Department of Education that is totally out of control, massive costs. And, you know, some of the Republican candidates like Common Core. I'm totally against Common Core. I want local education. When I'm in New Hampshire and Iowa and South Carolina, I want So important. So we're going to have that. We're going to save on Department of Environmental Protection because they're not doing it. They're not doing their job, and they're making it impossible for our country to compete. And many, many other things. Hundreds of billions of dollars is going to be saved just in terms of running government. In addition to that, I'm going to bring millions of jobs back into this country. Okay, darling? Thank you. Okay, question.
Mr. Trump,
Yes, ma'am.
my name is Michaela Connery, and in the spirit of problem solving, I'm wondering if you're at all concerned that some of the divisive language you use on the campaign trail undermines your ability to solve problems.
I have to say what I do. You know what? I mean, I understand. Here's the thing. I went to Ivy League schools. I know what's divisive. I know what's not divisive, in all fairness. And what you do, I don't want to necessarily be politically correct all the way down the line. Because I'm seeing people, they can't even function. I see politicians, they're afraid to say anything because it's not politically correct. And they know the answers, and they refuse to give them because they're afraid it's not going to be politically correct. And I am going to have to be who I am. Now, at the same time, I'm running against a lot of people. It was 16, now it's 15. As you know, one dropped out. Many are going to be dropping out, I think, very soon. If they're smart, they're going to be dropping out. Many. Too many people. Too many people. When it becomes a different kind of a situation, you'll see I'm going to be much less divisive. But always remember this. I never start anything. I never start. I said before, counterpuncher. I don't start. They start. They get very nasty. I mean, whether it's Lindsey Graham, whether it's Perry from Texas, I get along great. Then all of a sudden they start, because they're dying, they're doing so badly, that they figure, I don't think anybody in this room wants to have somebody that's not going to fight back. The problem we have in this country is we have people now that don't fight back. They don't fight back. And the country is tremendously, the country is being hurt tremendously by it. Okay. Another question. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Mr. Trump.
Thank you, darling. Thank you.
My name's Kyle Smith. I'm a student leader with the No
Where
Labels
are you?
chapter.
Where are you?
I'm over here, sir.
Okay,
Hi.
go ahead. We'll do you right after.
All right. So I just want to say thank you, first of all. And I was wondering what your plan is in working across the aisle to increase civic engagement among millennials, getting college students involved.
So important.
And namely, also student loans.
Yeah, so important, and that's going to be worked on. The one thing I get maybe more than any other question is student loans. I'm getting it from the students. They go out, they get an education from great colleges, many great colleges. They become the best student in their class. Everything's great. And then they can't get a job. The best way to solve it is to create jobs. But they can't get jobs. The students are going out, they're in hock. They're borrowing money all over the place. They borrow the student loan money, which is, by the way, one of the only agencies in government that makes a lot of money, that's the one place maybe we shouldn't be making so much money. But it's the question I get more than any other question. We are going to be cutting that down. We're going to give people incentive to go out and get an education, but most at a much lower price. Don't forget, these schools, because they get so much money from the government through the student, they're raising their fees to a point that's ridiculous. They don't need to get that kind of money. They don't need to get that kind of money. Because of the fact that the government is giving out so much money, you take a look at what's happened to the cost of education, and believe me, it hasn't gone up that much. So we're going to do a number. We're going to get those numbers down. And also, we're going to have jobs. So when you graduate, you're going to end up getting a nice job where you're very happy. Okay? Thank you. Great question. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm curious what your perspective is on the Freedom Caucus, or AKA, I guess, the Tea Party, which, of course, has been at the heart of.
But I love the Tea Party.
Okay.
I do. I love the Tea Party.
This is good.
You know what? The Tea Party, I'll tell you about the Tea Party. These are people, in all fairness, because you can't really, these are people that love this country. They do love this country, and they want the country to be great. I mean, it's very important. Go ahead.
Yeah. The issue is, for example, I see not to offend anyone, but quite frankly, I see the Planned Parenthood as it's a deck chair on the Titanic. So that's where I'm coming from.
But that's their point of view.
To shut
Sure.
down the entire government over it.
Yeah, well-
it's kind of the small-worlded mindset.
Well, they don't
is a
want
concern.
Planned Parenthood funded, and I think a lot of people understand that, including me. They don't want it funded. I mean, I understand that.
Right,
So I mean, you do have that.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel that. Go ahead.
Okay, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can prove me wrong, but I don't think that you're a friend to women.
I knew I shouldn't have picked her. I knew I shouldn't have picked her. All right, so let me give you that answer right now. I respect women incredibly. I have had women working for me in positions that they've never worked in terms of construction, in terms of so many different jobs. I had a woman who was in charge of the building of Trump Tower many years ago, before it was even thought, before anybody would have even thought of it, and did a fantastic job. I have given women more opportunity than I would say virtually anybody in the construction industry. I have a daughter named Ivanka and a wife named Melania who constantly want me to talk about women's health issues because they know how I feel about it, and they know how I feel about women. I respect women. I love women. I cherish women. You know, Hillary Clinton said he shouldn't cherish. Well, I said, I do cherish. I cherish women. My mother was one of the great people of the world, maybe the greatest ever, my mother. I respect women, and I'm going to take care of women. You know, Jeb Bush didn't want to fund women's health issues. You read that. You saw that. And then he took it back later. I will take care of women, and I have great respect for women, and I do cherish women. And I will take care of women. And I'll take care of us also from the enemy, meaning the enemy on different shores that's looking to come in and do numbers. Believe me, I will take care of the people in this country far better than any of the folks that you're looking at right now. That I can tell you. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, I thought it was finished.
Is it on? Okay. I want to get paid the same as a man, and I think you understand that. So, if you become president, will a woman make the same as a man, and do I get to choose what I do with my body?
You're going to make the same if you do as good a job. You're going to make the same if you do as good a job, and I happen to be pro-life. Okay? I'm pro-life. Okay. Question? Any other questions? Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. You have the mic back there? Yeah. Go ahead. Do you have a mic? Go ahead. Go ahead. Shout it out. Come on. Let's go. Shoot. He's joking. Come on. Harvard. You go to Harvard?
Hi, Mr. Trump.
How are
Thank
you?
so much for. Oh, sorry. Thank you so much for coming to speak to us today. I just have a really quick question about something you said earlier this summer about. Basically, you said that South Korea takes advantage of the United States in terms of the defense spending on the Korean Peninsula.
Right.
You said
True.
they didn't pay anything. However, I just want to get the facts straight and say.
Are
that
you from South Korea?
I'm not. I was born in Texas, raised in Colorado. But I just want to say. I just want to say that, you know, no matter where I'm from, I just like to get my facts straight, and I want to tell you that that's not true. South Korea paid $861 million.
Which is peanuts compared to what it's costing.
Yeah, but the United States also has geopolitical.
Excuse me. It's peanuts compared to what it's costing. It's peanuts. And by the way, they are a very wealthy country. Part of the problem when we talk about, like your question about deficits and about losing and why can't we do, we're defending Germany. We're defending Japan. We're defending South Korea. We're defending so many countries. We get peanuts. We get nothing. We get, you know, you're right. We get a small payment. It's a fraction, a tiny fraction. And I say all the time about South Korea. I ordered 4,000 television sets recently for a big project. They all come from South Korea. My only bidder was South Korea, except for Sony, which is in Japan, and they lost their way, okay? My only bidder, whether it's LG or whether it's Samsung, these are wealthy countries We have 28,000 soldiers on the border of South Korea. So we defend Germany, which is sending cars and everything over there, it's an economic behemoth. We're defending Japan. So here's the deals that we make. We defend Japan, and we have to defend them with our lives. If anybody attacks Japan, we have an agreement. We have to go and attack and fight and die and spend. But if anybody attacks us, Japan doesn't have to do a thing. That's the way we run things. It's not going to happen with me, folks. It's not going to happen with me. And if we're defending people that are far richer than us, they're going to have to pay for it. We want to help them. But why are we defending Germany? Why are we defending South Korea? Why are we defending Japan? And they don't do anything for us. We're going to have great relationships. But why do we pay the cost of defending the world? And you know, when you look at your military budget, yeah, it's far higher than anybody else's. But you know why it's higher? Because we're defending all these countries, not helping us. So we are going to change things around. And we're going to make America great again. Believe me. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lisa Borders. He's a Democrat, he's Republican. There's a fight in the race, who's gonna win? Put your differences aside, man, if you can. 'Cause it's way too many people suffering.
All right, guys, that is a wrap on this Donald Trump event. We are going to wrap up this special morning edition of News Now, this stream, and I'll be back with you guys at 10 a.m., so in about an hour and 15 minutes. Stay tuned. We'll have more Fox 10 News Now ahead. Bye, guys.